Rushing was Rushing cheer is real. That's all good and Rushing.
You do one more little check for our friends back here. Mic check, 1, 2. Mic check, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2. January 29th, 2025. Will be a fun one today. New faces in the room. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. 1, 2. Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2. U9, looking good. Thank you. Looking for K4. How we doing? 1, 2. Mic check, 1, 2. Live from the capital of the great state of Oklahoma. Thank you. How about our 1, 2, 3? Mic check, 1, 2. Thank you.
This guy wasn't ready for me? What's the deal? Hey, welcome everybody. Please have a seat. So excited to get back to the Capitol. I know you guys are ready for Monday, State of the State, and this place is going to be a lot more busy as the legislature comes in from around the state to do the people's business. Really excited about the kickoff of this year. Did an off-site strategy session with the new speaker Hilbert and the pro tem Lonnie Paxton. I'm really looking forward to a great session. I think both chambers are looking forward to working together this year, and it's going to be going to be a successful session. So one of the big things I'm focusing on is to rally the Oklahomans around some principles that we can all agree on. And I think it's what Oklahomans sent us here to do. I think nationally we saw some things happening at the national election, and it's kind of a return to normalcy. It's a return to common sense. Let's make sure that we focus on the American dream for the next generation. And those four things that I think is important that we always focus on. Number one is protecting the Oklahoma taxpayer. It's what I truly believe at my heart will continue to make Oklahoma a top 10 state. Number two, let's make sure that Oklahoma is the best state for business. If we make Oklahoma the best state for business, guess what? It makes Oklahoma the best state for education, the best state for infrastructure, and the best state to raise our families. And the third thing is let's safeguard our savings. When I took office, if you remember, we had almost no money in savings, and historically that had been our pattern. And we've built the largest savings account we've ever had. Our economy is the best it's ever been. And let's make sure that we don't go back to those times when we didn't have a adequate savings account. And the last thing is let's protect the Oklahoma way of life. And it can mean a lot of different things, but we're going to protect our farmers. We're going to protect we're going to deregulate. We're going to make sure permits are timely. We're going to make sure our regulatory bodies respond to our business needs. We're going to make sure that with the influx of data centers and technology and people asking for more power, we're going to encourage more power generation. We're going to take our clean burning natural gas, we're going to turn it into electricity that then is going to turn into more jobs for our citizens. So that's something that we're really blessed with in Oklahoma. So looking forward to a great session and being with you guys and answering questions as things move along over the next few months. So thanks for being here, and I'll open it up to questions.
Good morning. President Trump is talking about abolishing the federal income tax. Obviously, that's something you talked about a lot with new leadership in DC, new leadership here in the Capitol. Do you feel like this is the year for some kind of tax cut?
Well, I think most Americans, I think we're excited for a Trump administration. I loved what he said about setting up the External Revenue Service to go after tariffs and hold other countries accountable to pay their share back to the citizens of the U.S. So I think that's kind of interesting. I know that he's been studying President McKinley, and President McKinley was a big tariff president, and I know the president's talked a lot about tariffs to make sure that we are not putting Oklahoma or American companies at a disadvantage against other manufacturers around the world. So I think that's the big national picture. And my goal this year, I mean, I've been saying it for 6 years now. We need more taxpayers, not more taxes. Every time we've cut taxes, we've seen our revenue actually increase. And so what people don't realize is when we give money back to the taxpayer, the money doesn't disappear. It just stays in the citizens' pockets. And I believe that they can spend their money better than the government can. So my goal this year is a half and a path. So a 0.5 point tax cut and a path to zero. We're not cutting core services, but what that will do is it limits the growth of government. And our economy has been booming every single year that I've been in office. And we can't just keep raising the base level expenses. We need to give that money back to the taxpayers in the form of a tax cut. We've done it before. We did the largest tax cut in state history last year. We got rid of the grocery tax, which has helped tremendously on working families when inflation is causing prices to increase at the grocery store and all across different products in our country. So I hope to get a half and a path done this year. I think the Senate and the House are ready to deliver on that for Oklahomans.
I think some people have heard that call for a tax cut, and then also have heard some state agencies, executive agencies, explaining their need for additional revenue for certain purposes. You've got the mental health consent decree that will require some funding. You've got the Donahue Hospital that needs to be funded. Those are just off the top of my head. How do you square the idea of asking for $250 million, $350 million tax cut like that, maybe even more depending on the numbers actualized, with the needs that your own agency heads have articulated that the people need to have the services they need?
I can square it very easily. Government will spend every dime that you give them. And there's never a shortage of good ideas. People come to you every year and they want more. And if you give them more taxpayer money, look how much more good they think they can do. But there has to be a limit on it. And I'll give you a perfect example. I used it last year. New York and Florida. Those are two states in our country that have very similar population sizes. There are about 20 million people in each. And then you look at their state budgets. New York has a budget of over $230 billion. Florida's budget is $115 billion. Why is that? Well, one of the reasons I could tell you is New York has more money to spend. They have a 10.9% state income tax, and Florida has 0. I don't think people in Florida, they still have their Medicaid, they still have schools, we still have airports, we still have police. And so again, this is an age-old question. How big should government be? And I'm a limited government person. I'm a person that believes in the free markets. And let's leave those decisions up to the individual to spend that money. Let's leave it to churches and nonprofits. And again, remember, we've got $4.6 billion in savings. So I'm not saying we can't strategically invest in infrastructure or a mental health hospital or this or that. But you also have to realize since 2019, our appropriations have gone from about $8 billion to over $12 billion. So I'm not afraid to invest in certain things, but we cannot continue to increase spending every year by, over the next 6 years by another 50%.
Governor, I got 2 questions, one about immigration, one about budget. I'll start with immigration. I've been speaking with some folks in corrections, and they have said that before you can deport anybody out of our prison system, you have to commute the sentence. And I was wondering, I don't know specific inmates and what crimes they did, but they're in prison for bad things. Are you okay with commuting these sentences just to get them deported? I mean, are you okay putting your name next to a commutation for a rapist or a murderer just to get them deported?
Of course not. And I've got Tim Tipton, I've got Steve Harp looking at all of those people that are currently incarcerated. We have about 536 people incarcerated in state prisons that are here illegally. They've committed crimes, they're here illegally. And we're having to balance, yes, justice for the families and the victims. What is the country of origin? Do we have secure borders? Could they recommit a crime? Have they served their sentence? So those are all things we're doing. We're not going to cross the board, release bad people without serving justice. But there are people that are at the end of their sentence and they're about to get out. And historically, over the last 4 years, when we turned them over to ICE, nothing happened. They were just back into the communities. And so I think that's what Tom Holman, that's what the Trump administration is talking about. Oklahoma is going to be ready. Other states have been reaching out to Tim Tipton and Steve Harp to figure out how we're looking at those people in prison. But you make some great points, and it's certainly something that we're considering. And so the victims don't have to worry about that. We're thinking through all those things, and we're not going to let bad people out just to make a political statement. But I also am thinking about the tens of millions of dollars that Oklahoma taxpayers are spending incarcerating people that really shouldn't be in our state anyway.
My budget question, I've been speaking to some lawmakers. You're going to get the Board of Equalization numbers next month. And there is kind of a fear that that's Joe Biden's world. We're in Donald Trump's world now. We don't know how drill baby drill and gross production tax is going to perform. We don't know what they're going to do with inflation. How are you budgeting for a world we just got used to last week? Do you think those budget numbers will reflect how life will be in September or October?
So the Board of Equalization will get the numbers that predict or give the estimate of what the legislature can spend on February 14th. And if you'll look over the since I've been in office, we've been really conservative with our numbers. In other words, we have outperformed our numbers every single year. And that was back when Trump was in office and also the 4 years of President Biden. So we're really conservative when we go into those things. I think that's the right budgeting approach to take. And so, obviously there's a lot of things that can happen nationally at a policy perspective, but Oklahoma's in a great spot. We are an oil and gas state. I think we will only benefit from Trump policies. And again, back to my original statement on energy, I think Oklahoma is becoming the place to be for technology, for data centers. I think you're going to see a lot of development come President Trump talked about a $20 billion investment. Then he talked about a $500 billion investment. Oklahoma was on that list. I've taken some international trips to try to recruit some of those dollars to the state of Oklahoma to set up some of these centers. And so I think I see great opportunity for Oklahoma in the future, and I think our revenue will continue to climb up and to the right.
Good morning, Governor. Just wanted to check on if you are still kind of in support of all of the above energy policy. You mentioned energy consumption, the data centers, artificial intelligence stuff. You mentioned natural gas, obviously, but there's some bills out there that curtail some of our wind projects already in existence or planned. Are you still an all-above guy, or are you kind of just going on the all gas route?
I am still an all-above guy. Energy abundance agenda is kind of what I'm going to talk about. I've been, I think, very consistent on the fact that I don't believe in subsidies. And so let's not put our finger or thumb on the scale and pick one energy over another energy. Let's let the free markets work. And we believe that in Oklahoma. I was just with SPP yesterday, which is our Southwest Power Pool executives. They came over from Little Rock to meet with me. And one of the things that they've told me that I think is important for the American people and Oklahomans to understand is with wind or with renewables, you can't count on them when you need to. In other words, here's the example. There's about 35,000 megawatts of energy that is in the Southwest Power Pool from wind. But the nameplate, in other words, the amount of energy that you can count on is only 5,000, okay? From 35,000 to 5,000. Now, a natural gas plant, you can count the nameplate energy is 90% of what their total production could be. So in other words, if it's super cold outside, or if the load demand we need more electricity, if the wind's not blowing, you can't count on that. And so when you rely so much, and I've said this consistently, we're not against renewables. They're a good additive to the grid, but you have to have a base load of natural gas. And that's what I think the Biden administration has tried to sell a bill of goods to the American people, that we can be all on wind or solar or renewables, and natural gas is saving the day for a reliability purpose in the U.S. And also Oklahoma our mix of energy is driving all these economic developments because we have some of the most affordable energy in the country. And that's really, really critical for our state as well.
Good morning, Governor. Just have a couple questions. First is on business. You say that you want Oklahoma to be the best state for business in the nation. What are some essential initiatives that need to happen this legislative session to accomplish that? And what has been your input to the new legislative leaders to make that happen? And I'm going to give you my follow-up. Does tort reform in any way factor into making Oklahoma a better business state?
Well, great question. Couple thoughts. Number one is business courts. We got that passed last year, and we want to signal to the business community that Oklahoma is the place to be headquartered. Oklahoma is the place for our for rule of law. You see Delaware attacking Elon Musk's company, right? Got into compensation that was negotiated by the board and et cetera, et cetera. So he pulled out of Delaware. You saw the court system attack President Trump's business. I don't want businesses to think that could happen to them in Oklahoma. So we're going to set up business courts. It's going to be live in 2026. So really excited about that. That's one thing. I think the business tax, I've cut it already 2 points in Oklahoma. We want to cut another 0.5 point in the business tax, which will also signal to businesses that they can set up and they can be successful here. You can talk about the executive order I signed for permitting. Businesses want shovel-ready sites. They don't want the endless bureaucracy that sometimes slows down. If you look at how long it takes to get a permit in California to build a house, they're in big trouble. they're in big trouble with what's happening out there. And our hearts go out to all the devastation that's happened. But you're going to see people not rebuild. They're going to come to states like Oklahoma because it's going to be quicker and easier and more affordable instead of having to go through the endless bureaucracy to get a simple permit. So always thinking about that layer of things. Tort reform is something that businesses need assurance. You can't have runaway jury verdicts. That's something that I think is really important. From Governor Keating, my predecessor, he really focused on tort reform. And that's something that we need to look at to make sure some of the courts have eroded some of the gains that he did back in the late 90s. And we'd like to get those things reinstated. The medical community, the doctors have come to me and said, Governor, it is cheaper for us to set up shop with our malpractice insurance in Dallas, Texas, than it is in Oklahoma. I want Oklahomans to have access to all the doctors. I want more doctors per capita here than we have in Texas. I want it in rural Oklahoma. But you have to realize these people are going to be making a decision on what's best for them and their family as well. And we can't have expenses to be an outlier, right? Everything is market. We have to compete with Texas and Arkansas and Kansas on tax policies and make sure our insurance costs are comparable to the region that we compete in. So I think those are three examples of things that we'd look at this year, and I'd encourage the legislature to continue to move forward on.
Good morning, sir. You've always been pretty passionate about trying to save the state money and things. You recently issued an executive order concerning state vehicles and ordering every agency to look how many they have, and I guess it was an aim to reduce the number of vehicles. How many vehicles do we have, and why kind of focus on that issue?
You know, I learned that from a former governor in Indiana, Mitch Daniels, and I loved it when I first became governor. He told me that he went and put a penny on the right back tire of every state vehicle. And then he went back 30 days from then, and if the penny was still there, he sold the vehicle. And I thought, man, that's a brilliant idea. And so I know the waste. I know the people that have vehicles. I see the lots, and just trying to find out how many vehicles we have has been a challenge. And so I think we're down. Some agencies have brought to me, and just services are still happening. People are still are meeting the needs of Oklahomans. But I think we're down 600-700 vehicles. My goal was to get rid of 1,000 vehicles and just be able to share those vehicles more efficiently. And so just kind of getting the agencies to work together. That's why I like the consolidation a little bit. I like sharing some of the resources that we already have in state government.
Governor, there's been a lot of talk about the freeze of federal funding and everything from the administration. Can you talk about that impact on state agencies, local organizations, tribes? There's a lot of organizations that use this federal funding. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so it was brought to our attention yesterday, and I think a lot of overreacting. First off, I talked to Ellen Butner, who is our director of Healthcare Authority today, that manages our Medicaid. She has been able to access that federal website to draw down some funds that are reimbursement for our hospitals and our doctors. But I think a little misinformation. I think the Trump administration, what they were talking about is trying to get their arms around foreign aid. Like, where's all the foreign aid going to? Are we allowing these countries to just send out money? So I think he was trying to get control of that, putting America first as far as environmental agreements. You saw President Trump pull out of the Paris Agreement. And I think there was just funds just going out the door from the federal budget that he wanted to get his arms around. He wanted to end DEI. There were states that were pulling down, or universities pulling down DEI funding. So he was like wanting to stop that. I think most Americans agree with that. He wanted to defend women from gender ideology. There were maybe potentially states doing gender surgery that did not agree with the president, or in Oklahoma, that's not happening. But I think that's what he was talking about. We're not talking about SNAP benefits. We're not talking about Medicaid, all that. And we can share the memo back with you. was back reinstated. So there are a lot of misinformation yesterday. All that's back online. I think, Chairman Cole, our great congressman from Oklahoma, is the chairman of the appropriations. I think he was down in Mar-a-Lago meeting to make sure that, the core services were not disrupted. So, but yeah, if you believe in DEI and you believe in funding for, environmental agreements around the world and you're trying to, do those kind of things, you probably are upset about this. But Americans, I think for the most part, agree and applaud with President Trump trying to get federal spending under control. And I think that was the effort that he was trying to do there. And I agree with him 100%. Thank you guys so much, and looking forward to next week with you.